Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to use the analogy of camping to reflect my personal professional philosophies as a teacher. I find this very fitting because hence when you're camping you need a backpack and you need to have everything that you need to be self-sufficient in your pack. As when you're a teacher you need to have many tools and strategies to help you be the best teacher that you can possibly be. Piaget spoke about children being active participants in their own learning. Now, this is a theory that I align with, as I believe that experimental learning is something that's very important, giving students the opportunity to have a go at a task that they may not necessarily achieve, but learning from those experiences, learning from those mistakes and taking them on to the next activity to perform the task at a better level. Vygotsky took it to the next level in emphasising the importance of relationships and interactions between the learners and more knowledgeable people, such as parents, higher achieving students, or even most importantly, the teacher. Learning strategies are also very important in the classroom, and one that gelled well with me was De Bono and his 6 hats. These hats allow the students to see situations, learning experiences, assessment, all things classroom related and learning related in a different light depending on the hat they are wearing. Oh look, there's all the hats now. 6, beautiful. One of the most important parts of being an educator is being able to manage relationships. In particular, you'll be relationship that you have with your learners, your colleagues, and also outside groups such as parents or stakeholders within the community. As you can see in the video, I'm now pulling out my first aid kit. I think this is important because it relates to the relationship and having to maintain that relationship using tools and strategies such as the things that you'll find in a first aid kit to keep everyone happy, healthy, and maintained. Not to be confused by the Band-Aid solution of just slapping a Band-Aid on and she'll be right. My first aid kit is designed for the big issues, the big concepts and the big key points, because staying on top of this is vital for learning. I value maintaining healthy relationships up there with the teaching itself. For example, your relationship with the parents is just so important. They're the people who support what you're doing at school. They reinforce it. They get their students to come to school in a positive frame of mind, and just having them on your side is just so important to ensuring that you can teach to the best level possible. That goes with your colleagues as well. Having them on side, being able to support you in your year cohort, being able to team teach, being able to share resources, all of this will lighten your load and enable you to be in front of the class more, doing what your job is, teaching. Most importantly is your relationship with the learners themselves. It needs to be fun, safe, academic, but most of all, it must be fair. One key point to take away about relationships is that you should always be proactive, not reactive with dealing with situations. The next thing to come out of our backpack is our tent. Now, our tent gets put up in 3 separate parts, and relating this to my teaching philosophy, we have the tarp, which is going to be the base of our tent, and it relates to assessment. Then we have the inner, which will relate to curriculum, and then we have the fly, which will relate to pedagogy. Now, these all need to work together to be effective. Now back to assessment. For me, when I think of assessment, I think of creating tasks that are authentic, things which are real, and things which the students will be able to relate to easily. I also think of the theory of backwards mapping. So working out what it is that I actually want to assess and working out the best path to take to get those desired results. Assessment doesn't have to be boring. There's so many different avenues, different presentation styles, different means that you can use to find something that's going to be valuable for each individual learner and will make the assessment process rewarding. The next up is the inner of our tent. Now, for me, this creates the framework of the tent and gives it some structure. And for that reason, we're calling it the curriculum. The Australian curriculum, or ACARA, is a very valuable resource as an educator, as it shows you exactly where the students need to be at a particular time in their education. ACARA can be easy to teach to, but can also be quite difficult. For example, in the schools that I've been doing my pre-service teaching, I've had to align myself with their particular curriculum, which relies heavily on the C2C. And I guess this brings me to my dilemma. One of the experiences I've had was having to follow the C2C lesson by lesson and also completing the assessment task. I found this to be quite disengaging for the students and found myself trying to find resources which I could better use to give the students a better learning experience. As a young pre-service teacher who's motivated and willing to do some extra legwork to make these C2C lessons a little bit more engaging, I don't think it's such a bad thing. But being a senior teacher who's quite relaxed and happy with just doing the minimum, I feel that their students will be missing out on some great lessons and some great opportunities when their teacher solely follows C2C. Another experience that I've had has been using the C2C assessment tasks only, and that gives you a lot more scope to manipulate things throughout the unit to ensure that the students are having a great learning opportunity. To manage this dilemma and also the curriculum, I think it's important for us as learners to be creative and put the time and effort into creating lessons that you would be happy to be teaching. So the final piece of our tent is the fly. Now the fly is very important. It keeps the rain out, keeps bugs and insects, and keeps you safe. And for that reason, we're going to call it the pedagogy. Now to me, the pedagogy refers to myself, me. How am I going to facilitate learning within my classroom? You can have the best behaviour management plan, the best resources, the best ideas, but if you can't actually convey all this to your students, it's useless. As Hattie said, the teacher is the most important thing in the education system. So how am I going to be a good teacher? I think for me there's a few fundamental rules which I intend to follow. The first one is being fair in all the decisions made, and being consistent, making sure that you stick by what you say. The other one is having clear and consistent boundaries as well, and that extends to behaviour management, to marking standards, and just general dealing with kids on a day-to-day basis. Like I was saying earlier, the tent is a 3-step process, with the first one being the assessment or the TARP. Without good assessment or TARP, we might have some holes or some leaks come through. The next is the inner, which is the framework for our classroom. And finally, we put the fly over the top, which was the pedagogy. So that was the day-to-day runnings of our classroom through the eyes of a tent. Next up, coming out of our backpack, is the rules and routines. We're going to analyse this through the means of rock climbing. Now, to relate it, we're going to be looking at the carabiners and the ropes, which form my safety system. Much like the rules and routines of a classroom, you can't function without these. And much like rock climbing, I believe that we need to provide students with opportunities to take risks, but to also get the wow factor while being in a safe environment. I touched on these earlier, but for me, the 3 main ones are having clear boundaries, consistency, and being fair in your decisions. Research has shown that students respond better to a classroom that has rules and routines. For example, a routine may be as simple as we do maths in the morning, English in the middle break, and then we do sport in the afternoon. This gives the students the opportunity to know what's coming up, prepare themselves mentally, and be ready for the day's outcomes. This also extends to behaviour management. Having a process in place and having the students know this process gives them ownership of their own behaviour. A classroom that is operating with good rules and routines will create a safe and supportive environment, an environment where students will want to come to school every day and learn. The final thing that we need to pull out of our backpacks is the repair kit. I say repair kit, but I mean resources. The reason for this is there's no use trying to fix a flat tyre on a bike with a screwdriver when you really need a pump. And that's just like in the classroom. Having a supply of different strategies, different tools, and most importantly, resources will enable you to appeal to a wider audience. Resources is a very wide section in our teaching. It may be having the teacher aide come in for a particular time of the day. It may be having worksheets or building blocks or DVDs or computer lab time. Resources are all things which, when used correctly, can make your job a lot easier. For me, resources means a lot to do with learning styles. For example, if you have a maths problem, you may have a student who can just read it and do it simply, or you may need to draw it out for another student, or you might need to actually go outside and work it for a kinesthetic learner. Having the resources available to you to facilitate these different learning styles will be very valuable. One of the biggest resources that we have available to us as teachers are ICTs. Mark Prensky said that we're living in a world of digital natives, and this is even more so important with how quick things are changing around us. So staying on top of ICTs is very important. Well, that was the last item in my backpack, and it's now very full and heavy, and I've got a lot of work to do, just like an educator. So I hope you've enjoyed the analogy of backpacking as a philosophy, and also I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for watching.